up? I'm Chetan. With me is Chris. Say hello to everyone, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Chris.
That's a running joke. So, Chris, we
Uh,
talked about American comics. We talked about manga comics, Japanese comics, some Asian comics. What have we forgot?
European comics.
They make comics?
They do, although they're not comics as you would traditionally think of them. The one thing that doesn't exist much in Europe, if at all, is the floppy.
Yes. And they don't do superheroes also.
They do superheroes. That's not entirely true, but it's
Really?
not limited to or based on superheroes. The other thing that I would say, and this is relevant to an episode we posted just a little while ago, there isn't really a collector's market. Like is a collectability for first editions, but like nobody minds. Like if you want a complete collection of, of Asterix comic books, you don't need first editions. Like people are totally cool with just
That's
going to the store and
yes.
buying whatever's out now. And to be
Now,
honest, I don't even know if I've seen edition numbers anywhere prominent on
no,
a
I that's another factor of even no, Japanese manga have edition numbers because of the volumes they produce. They will produce like, let's say you know, a series of, let's say, Blue Lock. They would
yeah,
they have like 26 issues right now. So
yeah.
they put issue numbers, but that's it. And they
Yeah, but
don't
you
even
don't
put
put like first printing, second printing,
no,
third
they
printing.
don't put that. No.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question for you. Now, going back to, and I'll tell you my version of it. Teenager years. What was your first European comic you remember seeing?
I'll be honest, I read European comics before I read North American comics.
So, what was the first one you remember seeing on the
It was
shelves
either
or
it was either
bookshelves
Tintin
or
or
anywhere?
Asterix, I think.
Okay.
Tintin or Asterix would be the either one of those. I remember the library used to have Tintin and Asterix comic books available to take out, and I think that's the other good thing about European comics is they're hardcover, and so for libraries and for things like that, they often
Yes.
get them. And because,
And
like a floppy would be destroyed in regular library world, but a hardcover book does not. So it was
and
probably
one of
Tintin
the
or Asterix.
one of the things I remember, especially with European comics, is and this is where I remember traveling with my parents. You would used to see it in bookstores, regular
Mhm.
bookstores, and even airports. I remember seeing them in the bookstores in the airport because, like you
Yeah,
said, they're hardcovers and they're magazine format, so they're not floppies.
which is also their disadvantage to some degree because, like when I was a kid, the idea of like rolling up a comic book and sticking it in my back pocket was a thing, but you're not doing that with European comic books at all. Like
No,
it's a book. It's more book than comic.
and that's the thing that we talked about in our manga episode, where certain mangas are created certain size so people could put it in their pockets as they're walking or going to work or whatever. The convenience of it. And yes, a European is the opposite thinking, where they'll do standard 11 8.5 by 11 magazine format or even larger. They don't go
Yeah,
the
yeah.
opposite. They don't go smaller. They go larger.
Yeah, exactly. And there are soft cover versions of some of the books. I don't know if they're in your whether they're sold that much in Europe, but I do remember when I was a kid having some soft cover, I think some
I do
Asterix comics
remember,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
Asterix and Tintin. I remember, and what was the other ones? Do remember a lot of them. Most of them I remember soft covers. I remember soft covers.
Yeah, I remember hardcovers in the library, but then I remember soft covers. Like if I ever bought them, I would generally get the soft. It's a bit cheaper. That's the main reason.
Yes,
So, but I still have a few. I have a few of my favorite Tintin still, and a few Asterix comics books, and a few other ones like just sort of random ones. With nice art. Like literally, it's like a comic book going to a comic
yeah,
shop. Like you'll
that's
go in
it.
and flip through and go, "This is awesome. I'm going to pick it up." So it's definitely cool. So, well, how about yourself? When did you first encounter European comic books?
I remember I grew up with North American comics. Then I think at a bookstore or something, I saw this, and okay, I want to, I'm gonna say every teenage boy saw that issue of Heavy Metal, and the naked clad women on the cover and stuff like that with swords or ray guns or whatever. It's like, what more does a teenage boy need to see? You know,
Exactly, exactly.
and
You
you
know,
know,
it's
uh,
like
um, what's the guy's name? He did Ran Xerox, I think it's called.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember like looking at his covers and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of artists, European artists that we'll go into, but I remember heavy metal and looking at it and going, a lot of these artists I've never heard of,
Yeah.
because it's
The
like they're
British scene
all
is a little different than the rest of Europe, mainland Europe scene too. It's worth
oh,
noting.
British comics. Yeah, we do have to do another episode. Actually, that is true. We have to do another episode on British comics because that's completely different than standard European comics. Because
Yeah,
British
yeah,
comic is a mixture of European comics and North American comics, kind of blended. Taking the best, not best, but taking ideas from one side to the other and meshing it in. But for
yeah.
European comics, heavy metal was first time looking at and going, "Wow, never heard of these artists." I mean, I recognize some of the North American artists, and first time being exposed to, you know, you probably never heard of him, guy named Mobius.
I know Mobius, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm joking. First time seeing his work, and it blew me away. Honestly, it's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
wow. And that's my first exposure to an artist like that. And after that, I seeked out his work. What naming artist wise, Inky Belial. I'm gonna mess up names of a lot of artists, and Milo Manera is one of them, who's my
Yeah.
one of my all time favorite artists. And so, it's seeing all of these artists and going, wow, this is work you've never seen. Okay, the subject matter, for European comics are more risque than we were in North America. But you know what? But the talent was there. I mean, and one thing I noticed with European comics, it's just the artwork, even the coloring blew you away.
Yeah, it's very true. It's like it's such a different thing. And the other thing I liked about European comic books, and part of it is cultural, because I think there's so many countries in Europe that are so close together, but you get a mix of styles and everything. Like you'll get everything like you look at like Mobius and even Hergé to some degree, like Hergé who does Tintin.
Yeah,
He does like it's a lot more realistic, but kind of cartoony. But then you look at like Athletes, which is just total cartoony. They can both live in the same world, no
they
problem.
can. Yeah,
It's not like again, we were talking about our boom, our 90s boom thing where there's this idea of, oh, whatever's the popular art style, other companies will then copy it. And so then for like these 5 year sort of things in North America, you have the same art coming out, like everybody's making like, oh, well, this
now
style is popular, let's do it.
Now
But in Europe, it's
here's a
everywhere.
question, because I know you travel around a lot. So, but for a person living in Europe, or let's say Italy, or let's say you know France or anywhere else, are they seeing copies of, let's say, Mobius or Manera, or you know anyone? Are they seeing copies of them, like you said about the '90s boom, where everyone wanted to copy, Jim Lee, Rod Liefeld, and McFarlane? I wonder if that existed in European comics. We don't see it, so.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about Europe, again, this goes back to the idea of constantly reprinting, is if you want a Mobius comic, you don't have to, you just buy it
A Mobius
like
comic.
the complete collection is still there, like it's still in print. And so there's definitely people who are inspired by it, like you see style similarities, but I find that you don't really get this sort of like I've just copied this style and put it into it. It's more like because you can't because it's not like it disappeared. Like if you go to like Jack Kirby comics, like you'll see them on the shelves in the big collections and everything like that, but you don't really see a floppy that looks like a Jack Kirby comic unless it's somebody copying Jack Kirby. But
Yes,
because in Europe those books are always available for sale, that
they're
nobody
always
really
available.
copies it.
No, no, but I'm wondering. No, I don't mean it in copying that wise, where what the normal in our Boomer Bust of the '90s comic episode, we talked about once one style got popular, every company started copying that style and that
Yeah,
theme, and and making it characters and stories that they shouldn't be. Imagine Mobius trying to copy Liefeld, or McFarlane, you know,
yeah,
that type of thinking. But European, I've never seen that. And what you mentioned is they have a diverse way of creating books, and every artist does it his or her own way. Now, mind you, one thing I have noticed with European comics, I haven't seen too many women's name on comics.
That is changing a lot nowadays. And actually, we can, if you want to get into our little slideshow, we're going to try a slideshow for the first time on this. So let's hope it
Okay,
works
let's
okay.
do that. So explain the
Um,
slideshow.
so we'll start off. I'm going to talk a little about Paris and Prague, which is two places I visited. I visited Paris, Prague, and Brussels recently. And these are just some pictures I've got of comic book stuff along the way. I'll start in Paris and Prague. So this is a comic book shop I visited in France, which is really amazing. And I'm hoping I might be going back to Paris soon. And I'm actually going to see if I can do a video inside it. But just so you know, you see the word BD, that's a bande dessinée, which is actually comic book in French. Um, and you were talking about women in comic books. This shop actually has a whole huge section dedicated to women in comic books only.
Oh, perfect.
So
Perfect.
it's like I didn't get a picture inside. I'm hoping to actually, again, get more because the owners were amazing. But let's just go to the next one here. So the other thing I want to talk about real quick in France was they have these tile graffiti everywhere of like geek stuff. And I just thought I would point that out real quick. There's even a Princess Leia one. And these are actually tiles that people put up to decorate. And I even saw this weird Superman thing.
Oh,
But
wow.
but this is the other thing I wanted to point out was that in this is again in Prague and both in Paris, they not only do like the European comics, but they've actually translate so much stuff. And if you think about it, particularly this is in Prague, where not too many people in the world speak Czech, but they have tons of North American comic books translated as well.
Translated. Wow.
So and graphic novel stuff and everything like that. So this is even Calvin and Hobbes
Wow.
in Czech.
That's interesting. That means there is a market for it. When people say, well, comics are dying, this is dying, all that. Look at the European Japanese market, and this is a perfect example. I mean, you publish it, people will buy it.
Well, that's the other thing too. That like because they're so diversified in what they create themselves, they also like they're into getting North American stuff as well. Like they're open to everything because there's such a wide variety. So, and they even do this was a shot of some of the independent stuff that I saw in Czech
Oh,
in Prague.
wow.
So they have tons of their stuff, and you can even see like there's the one with the little sort of white big-headed dude. It's like it doesn't have to be comic book style or
Yeah.
even anything traditional. Like, and this is in Prague as well. There's this little mole man, the guy with the red nose, and he's everywhere. And it's based on a cartoon series that they have in Prague, and it's called The Little Mole. And I mean, it is everywhere. Like that's the thing too, is in a lot of
Wow.
countries, they'll have like one or two characters that are like theirs, and they like love them, and so they just like they just hang on to it. And so in Czech, this little mole guy is like massively popular. Also, some cool graffiti. I just thought I'd share that too.
Oh,
But
wow.
and I'm going to show you because while Prague and Paris definitely had a great example of European comic books, the real sort of king of comic book places is Brussels and like all of Belgium. So this
Oh,
is
really?
this
Wow.
Belgian comic books like have like I would say they're the king. Hergé, who does Tintin, is from Belgium. Um, and it's not too far from where Tintin's French, but it's close by. And so they just the amount of culture they share is like immense. And this is like tons of
Wow.
bookstores.
Look at the bookshelf.
I'm going to show you something really cool. This is the back issue bin.
And
It's
you mentioned that to
hardcovers
me,
in
all
bags.
hardcovers. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Like you just would
That's
not.
that's what a I hate to say that's what a comic shop should be. Because come on, I mean, what the floppies and stuff, you know, it's long dead. I mean, do collections, do the hardcovers, manga collections, and put them in bins like this. People sort through them.
Yeah, I saw this and I was just like, because I was wondering about that because in particularly in Belgium, like Belgium is I probably saw like when I was in Brussels, I probably went by about 7 comic book stores just wandering the streets. In France, I had to dig. In Paris, I had to find a few. Like the one I went to, I actually like looked it up and had some time on my hands and thought, okay, I'm going to go check out a comic book store before I leave. But it's like in Brussels, it's everywhere. It's even like Okay, they have this little statue called Mannequin Fist, and they actually dress them up as comic book characters sometimes. And they have cartoons about Mannequin Fist, lots of cartooning, like old style. Like this has been going on for a long time. There's lots of like
We talked
history.
about this. We talked about this many years ago when I went to India. I had a stopover in Brussels, and the first thing you mentioned was look at the statues of the pissing boy, you know. And no joke, I everywhere you turn, even Coke machines had that image on it,
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's pretty crazy. So the other thing too is when you go around Brussels on the street, just the walls, like they do decorations of cartoons.
See, North America is afraid of even, I mean, they're calling it graffiti, but graffiti and what do you call it? You know, in a negative way. But look at this; they should be doing this here.
And then like even up the side, like it's beautiful stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's just like
See, even
it's
that,
like
yeah.
it celebrates
So let me ask you this:
cartooning and stuff.
but why is comics and why are they more popular in Brussels? Because I would think like a city like Paris would have more comic shops and things are all around them because of the French culture, where I would say Brussels, okay, smaller country still, but I didn't think they would have that many comic shops and that many prominent imagery and stuff like that in the city.
I think Hergé, who does Tintin, has a big part to do with that. I think that he helps publisher like his pub. I think there's a lot of publishers that do independent stuff. I just think there's more of an interest in it than in a lot of places. So
But in
that's the end
North
of my.
America, okay, so
I'm going to
North
end the slideshow
America,
real quick.
where are you going to see a Jack Kirby mural? You're,
Yeah,
I mean, you'll see it in comic shop areas or, geek friendly areas, but you're not going to randomly see it in a street, on a street or something like that.
yeah. The only thing, actually, I heard recently, I was listening to a podcast about Superman, and apparently in Cleveland, Ohio, there's a square dedicated to Superman, and there's a
They have a
statue.
statue. Yeah, that's it. I remember that. I remember reading about that years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently, like there's certain areas where you find it, but you're absolutely right. Like it's, and I think part of the thing about your like what for whatever reason the Belgian culture just loves comic books. Like they obsessed.
I think
There's
all of
stores.
all I think all of Europe and Japanese culture embraces the comic as an art.
Yeah,
And that's where I think the key difference is compared to most, well, Canada and US, because I mean that's the two countries we're related to. So those two, they see a comic artist as an artist. They
they
don't look
do,
down upon it.
but they also don't mind selling out. Like the idea that
No, no, no.
like
No.
when you go to Europe, you'll go to a store. Like we're going to do a future episode on Tintin alone because I have enough stuff for Tintin alone. But the thing is, like, there's hundreds of shops selling hundreds of Tintin things, and nobody's sort of like, oh, that's sellout. It's sort of like, oh, look at this cool statue, look at this, look at that. Like, there isn't this. There's this idea that it's art, but it's also an idea that like selling a million keychains with his image on it is not
But the
like
same
a
thing, but that's the
sold
same
out.
thing with the Japanese culture.
Yeah,
I mean, look at you know, I'm gonna give an example like even Pokemon or Hello Kitty and stuff like that. I mean, you see it everywhere. But I mean, you could take a manga comic and put on keychains, posters, pillows, yeah, pillows with that imagery
yeah.
on it. So I think the culture is more open to it. And again, they see it as a culture, part of their culture, comics as part of their culture. Where in North America, you mentioned comics and culture, and you're gonna have people saying, no, comics are not part of our culture.
The only exception I would say is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think came close to what you get in that they got very
It did.
commercial and
It did.
acceptable, but then they were also very underground at the same time. Like you knew when you read the comic, you were getting the underground version, but when you watched the cartoon, you were getting the kid-friendly version, and nobody
Yes.
minded having both. Like it was sort of
No.
acceptable. So that was the closest thing I would say to like,
I agree. I think that was the closest thing. But Brussels, yes, no, I'm surprised on that. Belgium culture into, you know, I mean, even like the imagery you just showed with all those you know, books and stuff. That's great.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And there's just I mean, there's shops everywhere, and even if they're not selling, like even if it's just a tourist shop, might will always have a shelf full of comic books, or like hardcover
Yeah,
European comics.
that's it.
Like you'll
I
go to
think
like a
I
tourist
think
shop, they have them, and you'll go. And even I was showing you the stuff from Prague with the little mole guy who's like a cartoon, like a
yeah.
kid's cartoon thing. They're everywhere. Like every shop, like a bunch of shops have it. I even actually bought a little magnet. I'll take a picture and show you. But like, there's like all this stuff. Like they really don't mind the idea of it. Like they're proud of it.
Yeah. I remember years ago, um, found a couple of books. This is before I can't remember. I think it was called NBN was the publisher or something that published some of the European books. But before, I remember finding some books that were not translated.
Hmm.
I still bought them because of the
Yeah,
art, because
sure.
that's how much the art impressed me that I bought it not knowing how to read this story.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to. I mean, that's the one thing is it's either A, beautiful, or B, the story goes is they're simple enough too. Like I don't know how much you read European comic books now. I get in and out of phases, but I find that the stories aren't complicated.
No, stories are simple. I mean, even the old books,
Yeah.
if you want to say it's a story, it's a simple story. And I think that, again, it's the fun of the comics. You do a simple story, put artwork in it. It could be amazing artwork or it could be mediocre artwork. But one thing I found with European comics, and again, you could prove me wrong or anyone else, please. Uh, they didn't have the assembly line mentality.
Yeah, there are studios. I know that there are studios like where you have like, more than one person, but
Yeah,
generally it's led by the person. So it's sort of like
that's
Jim
it.
Davis does with Garfield a little bit. But like LJ did not draw every comic book,
No,
but
yeah,
he went through every comic book and he
yes,
added to it. Like he definitely there is his mark is on every single Tintin, but he didn't draw every part of every single
every
Tintin.
part, yes.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is I think there's a lot of like, imagine that after Jerry Siegel died, they stopped making Superman.
Yes,
Like that's the other thing too, is a lot of times the creator is attached to the
to the
book.
book, yes, yes.
So even like Tintin, they don't really make new Tintin anymore. Like the ones you read are the old
Reprints,
ones. And there's an interesting story, which again, we're going to do a whole thing on Tintin, another
Tintin.
episode. But the last issue is a really fascinating story about how they did the last issue of Tintin. It's the most unique thing I've ever seen. Uh, but it was only LJ was involved with every single one of the Tintin, and I think Asterix is the same. I think the creator, I forget his name, was involved, and Lucky Luke, I think, is the same as well. So there's a lot of stuff where it's like once the creator sort of goes away, it's done.
It's done. That's it. Yes.
So, I mean, part of the advantage is that like you have this limited run and then it's finished. It's sort of like British television shows, like a lot of them in the past. Once they ran their course, like the British Office did their episodes and that's it. Whereas the American Office went for like 9 years. And I
But
think comic books do
I
the
think
same
the
thing.
mentality of North. I mean, we could go on and on about this. Mentality of the North American market is milk it until it's dry.
Part of it, I think, is that I think the character in North American comic books is the most important thing. Whereas I think in Europe, the creator
It's
is
the
the most
creator.
important.
That's it. Yes, and same thing with the Japanese culture, where the creator's name is more prominent than the book. I mean, the
Yeah.
title's there, but people are buying it more of the creators and stuff like that. And on a side note, it's kind of like movies also. Like a lot of movies, people, like especially I'm gonna go on the Indian culture wise, even movie wise, people go and see because of who's in the movie, not because of the movie.
Yeah, there's a bit of that change with writers nowadays in television, where
It
people are
is,
sort of
it is,
fans
yes.
of writers. But yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, we follow creators. I think there's some nerds who are like,
Yeah,
oh,
we do.
wherever Sam Keith is drawing a comic book, I'm
Yeah,
there. And then
certain
there's
creators you go and just buy the name, and I think with the European culture, the name, like, again, giving out a lot of names and stuff like that for the longest time. As soon as I saw Mobius on a book, I bought it. You know,
yeah. I think I think the thing that too that happens in Europe is the creator and the characters are intertwined. they're sort of together in that
Yes,
like a creator and his a creator has his character and he sort of sees it through, whereas there's no sort of like passing on that character to another person a
that's
lot of
it.
the time. And so like again, it's funny because again, I've recently learned that Joel Siegel wrote some Superman later in his life, like much later in his life. Like he wrote some of the Justice Society stuff, I think it was,
Oh, did
under
he?
a pseudonym.
Okay. Oh,
And
really? I have to
a
watch
lot of
the
people say
Chris.
there's some of the a lot of people say there's some of the best Superman stories that have ever been written later on.
Chris sent me the podcast. I haven't watched it yet. I will put a link on it here if anyone wants to watch it.
Yeah, it's called the Comics Code. It's like a 7 episode thing about Superman. It's really interesting. Maybe a little controversial, but really interesting. But I
Yeah.
just think it talks a lot about creatorship versus character in North American comic books. So, but
Now, one thing which this is a talk I've had with so many different people over the years, uh, is like European comics. You look at, especially with European comics, you look at the artist's name, then you look at the title, and you look at the art and stuff. And I think the artist, I mean, there's, dozens of artists and stuff like heavy metal use some of the top artists in there. And for me, I want to visit like you when you went to Prague, when you went to France, and when you went all over Europe and Asia, went to the comic shops. That's what I want to do and experience like whatever artists I haven't never heard of and
yeah,
see their artwork.
and there's thousands of them. Like, and it's like the thing about the culture there too is there is a bit of like, you know, the underground scene is a big deal. Like it's actually like it's known as being the area. And I'll tell this story about when I went to that comic book shop in France, which was kind of weird, and it's never happened to me. So I went there and I didn't say I made comic books. I didn't say I was an indie comic guy. I just sort of, was poking around. Owner came up to me and was like, "Oh, can I help you find anything?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just kind of look." And I told him, I said, "I'm kind of just looking for inspiration." And I said, "Oh, and I make comic books." And his attitude changed, and he was like, "Oh my God, you make comic books?" Sort of like you're an important person. Like, thank you for visit. He actually like thanked me for visiting his store because I was a comic book creator.
Wow.
And I didn't have any copies of my full size comic, but I have some mini ones that I do, like tiny little foldy things. And I had some with him and I gave him one. And he was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." He goes, "Can I have this?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And he's like, "This is great." And he started like showing it around.
Wow.
Like it was like this gift. And then they would say, like customers would come in. He'd say, "This guy makes this comic book."
See, I wish comic shops were like that here because here you seem like a pariah when you walk into a comic shop. When you tell them you're a creator, it's like
Yeah.
you're begging them to look at your book.
He was trying to figure out ways that he could possibly bring my book into his store.
See that's where that's where the appreciation of an artist and a creator is acknowledged in those type of stores because you know not to say bow down to all the creators and stuff like that. But what? Acknowledge these people who are at least trying. You
Yeah.
know, it's like I mean, you experienced, and I know a lot of creators have experienced it trying to sell their books to a store. Um, it's like, well, you don't draw. You're not writing Superman. You're not drawing it, so I don't want your stuff. It's
It's
like
almost like they're doing
they
you a
brush
favor
you off.
as
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they're
opposed
doing
to a
you a
mutual
favor.
sort of thing.
That's it. Yeah. They don't see the what do you call it? The creativity, the drive that this person has taken to create this mini comic like you did and say, "Hey, you created this. You put the
Yeah.
time and effort into this." They don't see that.
No. No,
And
it's
that's a
definitely
huge difference between I would say North American culture and European culture where European and in general in art also, European culture has more respect for art than our culture does.
and it doesn't have to be fine art too. Like the thing too is
Just
like even
any
if you
art,
look
any art. Yeah.
like if you look at even in France, if you go to the museums, there's often things of like the famous stuff in the Moulin Rouge, which is the famous art of like there's cafe art that was posters for cafes that a lot of those fine artists would make that were just cartoons.
Yeah.
And like fine artists, like your I don't know, I'm trying to think of fine French artists that have contributed, but a lot of them contributed also to like commercial stuff. And they're like that commercial stuff is now sold as giant posters because
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
considered fine art. And so there is this idea that there isn't a difference between the commercial art and the fine art. I mean, the fine art is definitely like in the Louvre and stuff like that, but the commercial art is still acceptable, and it's still okay to have like a Moulin Rouge poster for like basically a burlesque strip club in France. And there's fine artists who did posters for it back in the day, and now those posters are sold all over France.
All over France. Yes.
And so it's acceptable to do that. Whereas I just think, again, I've definitely been. I mean, we've done signing. We did a signing at a comic book shop who highly respects the artists
Yes. That's it. Yes.
quite a bit. But on the other hand, there are some times when you go into stores and you kind of go, oh, I'm selling this comic book. They're like, I don't know. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like, and obviously we're not asking you to buy it outright. We're
No.
willing to
No.
like work something out. But stores in Europe would buy outright, no problem. And the thing is, because they do that, they get diversified. They diversify the people in their shops to
That's it.
getting
Yes.
used to it, and so they actually sell the stuff. So then they're not losing money in buying indie stuff. They're actually making money because they have something different. So I mean, we could talk about diversity in comic books for months, years. It's probably going to be the part of our thing, but we should wrap this up because
and
we have more comic book stuff to talk about, and
and
we're gonna
on
have a
a
future episode on Tintin.
final note, this is, for personal experience and looking at comics from all over the place and stuff. North America has to learn about art. You know, comic comic creation is an art. It's like,
It
you know
is.
what? That's the thing. And look at Europe, look at Asia, look at Japan, you know, look at those areas. They appreciate comic artists. They respect comic artists. We are creators. We do art.